the word whirlwind is not up to task with how intense it was.
ChatGPT.
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 When we launched ChatGPT, no one was really paying any attention to it. We were all extremely fixated on GPT-4 and how powerful it was. And in the meantime, ChatGPT was sort of the side project. Let's do this thing called Chat with GPT 3.5, which then, thank goodness, morphed into ChatGPT is the name. It really barely registered on the go-to-market team. I think I got one Slack about it. Just FYI, we're launching this thing. The way we launched it was a blog post with a call to action buried at the very bottom of the blog post that was to click into it. There was no email sent out, there was no marketing, there was no landing page. I mean, it was the most low-key launch of all time. It's like day one, oh, this thing is getting a little bit more traction than we expected. Day two, is that the New York Times writing about us? That's a wild, And then day three, it's like, oh gosh, this thing is huge. And then it just kept going from there. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
It's not every day that a product launch drastically changes the world. So when it does, you need to act fast to ensure that you adapt and stay at the forefront of what's about to happen. We've talked a lot about the changes that AI is bringing. Now imagine you're on the inside leading the teams, bringing the most recognizable brand in the AI space to market. How do you stay ahead of the curve when you are quite literally building the curve in real time? Today's guest, I Aliisa Rosenthal, head of sales at OpenAI, started with a sales team of only 10 people and scaled it to 500 in under 2 years. In today's episode, we discuss the challenges of growing so quickly in an environment where change is the everyday normal, often multiple times per day. You'll learn the lessons from Aliisa in joining, building, and growing within such a competitive market that is reshaping everyday life. This is episode 13 of Tiffany's podcast. Hey, Aliisa, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's great having you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited to dive into our episode today because I'm really in awe of what you've been able to build as head of sales at OpenAI. And I think there's a lot to unpack there, especially in how you've grown these teams and really led that to where it is today. And so why don't we jump right in and kind of unpack that a little bit together? I'm really curious of what's helped you most in getting into a position where you were really trusted to grow a team from 10 to 500 people. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. Can you walk us through a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think just for some context, I joined OpenAI in early 2022. When I joined, it was incredibly flat. There was not much of a sales or go-to-market organization at all. It was just a few of us. It was pretty scrappy, a couple salespeople, some customer support, some what we called solutions architects helping, talk to customers about AI for the most part. And I really had to roll up my sleeves and get in the trenches. It was not coming in as a senior leader with a huge organization. I had to learn the ins and outs of our API, the capabilities of our models. I helped author a white paper on embeddings. I really dealt one-on-one with a lot of our most critical customers and helped solve their problems. So I think, really being in the trenches, practicing what I preach, I think that helped earn the trust of a lot of the other folks at OpenAI. And I think in general, I've always believed in being a leader who practices what I preach, not above doing the heavy lifting. And the other funny anecdote here is when ChatGPT launched at the end of November 2022, I only had 5 sales reps. One was on paternity leave. And you can imagine just the complete tidal wave of inbound and interest we had. And I just had to jump in and be a rep. And it was funny. I remember hired a guy in February, and he came in and he's like, so what's the difference between your job and our jobs right now? And I'm like, yeah, it's a valid question. I'm trying to lead the team while also taking tons of calls myself and closing contracts myself. And so it was really all hands on deck after ChatGPT launched. So I think when you go through something like that and, leadership sees you really stepping up and being a part of the team, I think that was a great way to earn trust.
Oh, definitely. I really love that you're pulling on that core too about leading by example and not being above the work. That's an amazing leadership quality, obviously. But I imagine, Lisa, that probably also helped you rally the right people towards your cause as things are building and things are shifting so fast, especially at that moment with ChatGPT coming into market. Was that like a complete whirlwind for you as you look back at that moment and how far it's come and how it's continuing to evolve so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe. The word whirlwind is not up to task with how intense it was. So, yeah, I mean, when we launched ChatGPT, no one was really paying any attention to it. We had GPT-4 had finished training in August. We were all extremely fixated on GPT-4 and how powerful it was, and we were nervous about it. What is the world going to think? This model's so powerful. And in the meantime, ChatGPT was sort of the side project that was, oh, maybe we should try to get a little bit more feedback on the right format of interacting with our models. Maybe we should try out sort of more of a chatbot conversational style approach. Let's do this thing called Chat with GPT 3.5, which then, thank goodness, morphed into ChatGPT is the name. And, it really barely registered on the go-to-market team. I think I got one Slack about it. Just FYI, we're launching this thing. It's really designed for researchers. We don't really expect, a big commercial impact here. And then when it launched, it took a few days. It wasn't like, the way we launched it was a blog post with a call to action buried at the very bottom of the blog post that was to click into it. Like there was no email sent out, there was no marketing, there was no landing page. I mean, it was the most low-key launch of all time. And somehow it just started building a life of its own, and it just took on such a profound virality. It really took us a little while to grasp what was happening. It was like day one, oh, this thing is getting a little bit more traction than we expected. Day two, oh, is that the New York Times writing about us? That's wild, And then day three, it's like, oh gosh, this thing is huge. Engineers, we need you to, work overtime and prop the thing up, and then it just kept going from there. So it was quite an adrenaline-filled experience.
That's so interesting, Lisa, hearing the behind the scenes of how ChatGPT came to life, because I think as an avid user and what we're seeing on the outward end or on the other side, it would never have felt like it was this thing that almost became like an unexpected hit and something that was adopted so quickly. Was that really surprising for you and the team as you were navigating through that like day by day and maybe even minute by minute?
Yeah, I think what we took for granted internally, we had been playing with with GPT 3.5 for about 9 months at that point. We had access to it. We had an API to access it. We had a playground internally. So we had been interacting with that model for so long that we forgot the novelty of it. We started to take that for granted. And really, OpenAI at that point, our models were only really accessible to developers. You had to be able to understand how to use an API, at the very least how to interact with our playground, which was not the most user-friendly. And we didn't realize the small act of taking what we already had and making it accessible to anybody for free in an easy-to-use user interface. We really dramatically underestimated the impact of that. So we were just completely shocked. We're like, oh my God, this isn't even GPT-4, and everybody is so excited about this thing is taking off. And wow, we really underestimated the power of accessibility and a great UI. And it was funny,
My gosh, I mean,
if you look at the timing, it was the worst timing ever to launch a product, like the beginning of December, and the company completely shuts down for Christmas and New Year's. We have like a, winter break, and, which is the worst timing ever. But we all thought, okay, this thing is getting we're having a virality moment, but we'll all go home for our winter break. We'll come back in January and everything will go back to normal, which is the opposite of what happened. We came back in January and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we were, okay, this is not a small fad, 5 minutes of fame. This is real. And we just
unreal. Unreal, a whole new normal that you had to get used to with the teams. And I mean, speaking of teams, so I can imagine as things are taking off and you're building this really from that ground up and seeing that inner working, I imagine the types of people you were bringing into the team was probably really strategic and really intentional. So Maybe with that in mind, what were some of the first non-negotiable hires, Aliisa, that you really prioritized when scaling the team? And how did you sequence the hiring across roles?
Yeah, I'd say early on, I mostly look for Jacks and Janes of all trades. Really didn't know yet, especially early 2023 when we started to scale. Didn't know if we'd segment on revenue or employee size or product or sales cycle motion. Really didn't know. That it was so much unknown. And so I really just tried to find smart, technical, customer-oriented people who were willing to do whatever it takes. And on that note, by the way, because this is something I get asked about a lot, we didn't have commission at OpenAI. We still don't have commission at OpenAI, which I do think changes a bit of the profile of the person who's interested in working with you. And a lot of founders ask me, like, can I do this too? Should I do this too? And I think very early on in your first, 5 sales hires, it works well. You want people who are down for the cause and willing to do work outside of their paycheck. We were asking reps to write technical documentation, build processes, alpha test our products, coordinate launches, do all kinds of things outside of a normal day-to-day sales job. But that said, I do think for most companies, as you scale, you need to start to add a commissioner quota. And really, primarily, that's because otherwise you'll have trouble attracting the very best talent. I think OpenAI is uniquely able to get away with it. A, because the brand of OpenAI, and B, because we have a generous equity structure that does reward, and it is somewhat liquid, so it does reward sales reps in a different way. So just a side note, because I get asked about that a lot, and it does kind of change the profile of the person that you're hiring with when it's more of a flat salary.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate the transparency on that. I think it's such a valid question for bringing in any type of sales team, but I love that you really emphasized the connection with obviously the vision and the mission of the company. And even whether there's commission or not, having that at the forefront of why we're working with a certain company, that's really the foundation that builds amazing and highly retained talent and ones that are looking to really build this and grow with it. But it's so interesting that you're sharing, because of the other compensation structure that's built in within OpenAI, that kind of offset that a little bit. So a good consideration, I would say, for anyone maybe in that type of position looking for a role like this to measure it across different factors when it comes to that compensation piece. Did you ever find that in terms of assessing a candidate that was the right fit for a place as unique and really as fast moving as OpenAI, that there were certain criteria that really stood out to you as like, okay, this is someone that I know is going to thrive here? Because I can imagine, with the needs just changing so quickly, like what's happening in current today might be very different than even tomorrow. Did you have to balance that in a certain way when hiring?
Yeah, I think, when you're referring to the speed and the agility and the change, I think we really look for 3 things. And one was just adaptability. Asking things like, have you ever taken on a role or responsibility outside of your normal job description, and how did you approach it? Or tell me about a time you received feedback and how you worked on that and changed your approach given that feedback. We also looked for sort of what I call AI curiosity. I think a lot of people want to join OpenAI because it's OpenAI, but we really wanted people who were genuinely excited and interested in AI. And so, a question I ask a lot is, tell me about a field or a subject you're really interested in, and how do you think AI is going to impact that? Because, it's going to impact everything. And just, have they really given, first of all, do they have any passions? Do they have interests? That's always great to see, curiosity and passion. And then have they really thought about AI and the impact AI will have on the world? And then the final thing I'll say is strategic thinking, which, the best way we've actually found to test for this is in a role play environment and sort of, we do a lot of like deal reviews and deal strategy reviews. And part of that is trying to test for, the ability to change directions, to be nimble. If they try a certain approach and that doesn't work, can they adapt to the environment and try a different approach? So those are really kind of the 3 things that I like to test for to see if someone is the right fit for the unique speed and pace of OpenAI.
That's so interesting and really good criteria, I would say as well. That can adapt for so many types of organizations. Even just the genuine curiosity from what you're sharing, Aliisa, we find that a lot. Even with the clients that we serve, it's a lot of showing those types of capabilities and even some of the softer side that shows who you are and your character as an employee, as a talent, that can really help you deliver well and effectively in the role. So it's really, really good to hear that that's something that's been of value to you as you're assessing what that fit could look like within your team. And you mentioned a little bit about the speed because I think that's such an important factor here. And I can imagine almost a concern that might come up is how do we balance that quality of the team and the quality of the talent, but also really keeping up with the speed and the rhythm that we're feeling in the day-to-day. Has that ever been a challenge for you or your teams? Have they felt that in a certain way? I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, the pace is very unique. And it's hard even to describe it. I think people come in and we try our best to prepare them for how intense and how fast everything moves at OpenAI. You come in and you are just bombarded, both internally, externally. We've got Slack and it's always on and it's very noisy and it's constantly everyone's like, I just feel like no matter what I do, I'm behind. And that's the reality. And so I do my best to prepare people. This is what it's going to feel like. And you will never feel like you are completely caught up. It feels like limitless work to do. And you just have to sort of adapt to it. You eventually get used to it. You get used to the prioritizing and figuring out, okay, what's really critical. There's the whole framework of important versus urgent. You figure out what to focus on and, figure out how to organize your Slack in a way that you can stay mostly caught up. But it's hard. And I've been in a lot of startups and a lot of intense environments. I have never seen anything like this. It's next level.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the scale that's moving so quickly, it's probably every day is feeling a little bit different than the last. But it's good that you're sharing that too, of just preparing people for what they can expect, because I feel like that's where a lot of things can go wrong, where they come in with a certain expectation in mind and then it's just night and day different from, what they actually live in and live and breathe. And so the fact that you're kind of setting that tone out of the gate and prepping them that this is going to feel a little bit different, even to your point, Aliisa, with some of your prior startups that you've worked at, seeing that clear distinction. It's probably, I would imagine, something that also creates a lot of excitement and energy to be at the forefront of this and to be able to be building what so many people can probably not imagine living without anymore in their life. What does that feel like from a team standpoint? Do you get the sense that they're almost feeling that kind of response in real time?
Yeah, what I'll say about the wonderful thing about working at OpenAI is there's this sort of positivity and this feeling like you're making a strong impact. There's this purpose, and it really permeates everything. I think people feel very inspired by the mission, very driven to do their absolute best. And what that means is you are surrounded by people who are the most competent and best people in the world at whatever it is they do, who are giving you their best work all the time. And everyone feels this sort of positivity and purpose that really is almost contagious. And so it makes it an extremely exciting place to work, even if it is fast and high adrenaline. It feels good. It feels like we're all marching together towards something we feel really strongly will impact the world in a positive way.
Yeah, something almost bigger than ourselves. That's really inspiring to connect to something like that. And you're making me think too, Aliisa, because I imagine with bringing on new hires and needing to ramp up so quickly, but tying it to the mission of OpenAI and the pace that's there, were there any steps or systems or processes that you found really help them kind of gear up into that really quickly and as they're starting their new roles in your team?
Yeah, I think sales enablement or sort of onboarding is really hard and really challenging. I don't know if we've totally nailed it yet, but we did, we hired this woman, Leah Connor, who was wonderful, and she has helped build some structure around what onboarding is like and building the program and having classes of hires instead of ad hoc. And, it's an ongoing work in progress. I think getting us to a point where we feel like everyone's really ramped and connected. I think the thing that has been the hardest is, when you work for OpenAI, no matter what role you're in, literally any role in the company, people see you as an AI thought leader. They see you as an ambassador of OpenAI. And what that means is you need to have a point of view. And I think that has been the hardest part, has been making everyone on the team an AI thought leader and feeling confident in their point of view about AI and its impact on the world, and prepared to answer hard questions about that in any customer meeting. And so that's really the challenge. That's what we're focusing on now, is making sure everyone on our team feels confident in their point of view on AI.
This is such a good insight, Lisa. I can't tell you the amount that we even talk about this with our own clients that we support, because having that point of view and just thinking differently, like it's almost table stakes at this point. And the more that you're leaning into it, the more that can really drive that level of connectedness and forward movement in an organization. I can imagine it's on a whole other level at a company like OpenAI, where it's at the heart of what you do. And maybe kind of with that in mind, I'm sure your own leadership style has probably evolved quite a bit, from when you started there a little bit 2 years ago, leading up to now. How would you say, Lisa, that's evolved and really keeping up with the pace and leading a growing and larger and probably an even much more complex team?
Yeah, I think I've had to focus on two things. One I'll call operational excellence, and the other is delegation. Is making sure that I'm not the one doing everything, because then I'll be a traffic jam. So there's just way too much work, as I mentioned before. It feels like there's limitless things to do. But luckily I have a fantastic bench of leaders who really will throw themselves at any task with energy and dexterity. And so learning how and when to ask my leaders for help and give them opportunities, honestly, to showcase their strengths and talents. It works well for everyone if you can figure out how to empower your leaders, and that helps you become a more effective leader yourself. And then the second thing is sort of this operational excellence, which is, with so much going on, I had to figure out abbreviated ways to keep my thumb on the pulse of everything happening on the team and be able to report that, cross-functionally as well. And so, things like Friday recaps over Slack and staff meeting update summaries. And I would do, AMAs with the whole team to get their feedback. And that would really help me hear what was top of mind. So I would just have to come up with ways to stay really close to what was happening, but in a manageable format, because obviously you can't have one-on-ones with everybody. So that was really, I think, how I had to learn to scale myself.
That's really, really good insight, I think, because there's probably a lot of those pockets along the way as well where you're noticing those shifts happening in real time. But it's also, I imagine, pretty inspiring for the team, and seeing that evolution, knowing that there's going to be those moments where you have to ask for help, where you have to maybe get insight from others that you're collaborating with. So it's been really, really cool to see how that's evolved for you in that time. I'm also so interested because obviously with a product like ChatGPT, something that is used so much, especially now. And from a sales team standpoint, obviously, as you said, wanting to become, an AI thought leader within OpenAI, were there really like tangible ways that the team that you were leading was really using this in the day-to-day, and that continues to kind of use it in their day-to-day for what they're bringing forward for client partners or efficiencies in the sales process? I'm curious if there's any kind of tactical strategies that you find have been working really well to help you thrive and them thrive together.
This has been an interesting arc for us, because obviously we want to drink our own champagne and use AI as much as possible. I think when we first started scaling the team in 2023, it was a hard decision point because we knew it was coming. We could see it, but we weren't quite there yet. And so we did end up, I think, hiring a lot of people. But over the last really 6 months or so, we have started to apply AI to more processes and apply AI automation to more processes which has let us do things like promote some of our SDR team into sales and make our inbound lead funnel have a lot more AI and automation applied to it. So, like lead enrichment and deduping and, the emails, the sequences, like a lot of that is automated and using AI now. And we couldn't really do that 2 years ago. We just weren't quite there, but now we can. And so this is a journey we're on. And I think we just created sort of an AI innovation lab within the go-to-market team to start to experiment and figure out where and how we can apply AI in more and more places. So I think in 6 to 12 months we'll be a lot further along than we are now, but we have made a lot of progress, especially on the inbound funnel.
That's amazing to hear. It reminds me too, because I really love the article that you had, Aliisa, around the Venture Beat, where you were talking about for OpenAI sales leaders acting almost as AGI Sherpas and sharing how you built that go-to-market strategy. And I was really interested to hear a little bit more around the mindset that translates into how your sales team really interacts with customers day to day. Can you share a little bit more around that and how you view that?
Yeah, I think we take that role very seriously. Like this is a massively disruptive new technology. It's really a paradigm shift. And I feel very strongly that AI is going to change the way we do almost everything. And, it's important that we help companies understand this and navigate this. And, they all have a lot of questions. And I mentioned before, we are ambassadors to the company. We are AI thought leaders. And part of this also means helping our customers navigate this sea change. And so it is something we take very seriously. And we're really focused on equipping the team to be thoughtful and effective AGI Sherpas to our customers.
Oh, big time. Has there been any type of like common resistance that you're facing when it comes to AI adoption and knowing like, oh my gosh, you need to do this. It's going to be so beneficial, and getting that through to the other external partners. But anything kind of coming up as a common theme that you're seeing that's something you're still kind of working through with your sales teams on the other end?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think every company and organization would readily agree, yes, AI is important, and yes, we need to figure out how to adopt it in some way. I think there's a lot of nervousness because people don't understand what is the right strategy. And going back to the pace of change, if I adopt a strategy today, will be obsolete in a month. And so that is a lot
Yes.
here is just, I just want to sit and wait and see how this all settles. But the problem with that is it's not going to be settling anytime soon. And so if you choose that strategy, you're really just going to be sitting and waiting and on the sidelines. And companies that start to adopt this and start to make their workforce more effective and start building AI into their products are going to leapfrog the companies that are sitting and waiting. And so
Mm.
I know it's so scary and hard to make a decision. It's overwhelming. Every company out there now says they're an AI company. But something is better than nothing, right? Starting and dipping your toe in the water and getting your workforce used to AI. It's funny. I hear time and again the number one thing that changes whether or not people find AI useful or helpful is if their boss is using it. And, so it really comes
Ah.
down. The companies where the CEO is really into it, like we have a lot of clients where they say things like, the CEO has required that every single project, every deliverable uses AI in some way. And so we are all really
Mm.
learning it now to make sure that we meet that expectation. And that drives so much productivity internally because people are collaborating with it and sharing the impact. So, I tell organizations it's just about trying it and getting people AI literate because they're using it it's almost like the internet. It's like people are like, tell me the use cases. Why should I use AI? And it's like, imagine it's in the 90s and we're trying to explain the value of the internet and what you would use it for.
Oh,
You're going to use it for everything. But as soon as you start interacting with it and seeing the power of it, you'll get how to use it. And everybody will use it in a slightly different way and find things that really make their job easier. But it's hard for us to come and say, here are the 1,000 different use cases that
of
are.
course.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but I get the nervousness. I do. And I get we've talked about it a lot, how fast everything's changing and the pace. And if I go and buy a product and roll it out today, is that still going to be the best way to infuse AI into my workforce in 6 months? We don't know. We'll never know. But something and acting and building that AI literacy and competence is much better than just waiting.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy that you shared that, Aliisa, because I'm definitely sensing that too in the work that we do. And you're so right that it comes from the top, and that level of adoption and endorsement is going to go a long way for how that implicates a certain workforce. I think also, the idea as you're sharing of just start, just like do something, get it going, experiment, because every organizational culture is going to have, different ways of what might work for them. But waiting is obviously a really dangerous strategy because it's evolving so quickly that there's not really the option to wait. And coming from a place of fear is likely going to instill that fear in their own team that could be really limiting and so unfortunate at an exciting time like this. And even just speaking of change, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Aliisa, with your teams, but are there specific ways that you really coach your team members to stay resilient and adaptable through the constant change and evolution that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, look, change is hard. I don't think humans are really wired for change. Like we like figuring out how to do our job and then just doing it and not having to learn new things and try new things. So I empathize with that a lot. And that said, what I do is I express to my team at every step of the way, this role is going to change a lot, and you can't get too comfortable. This is never going to feel comfortable and easy, because once you feel comfortable, it's going to change again. What we're selling, how we're selling, who we're selling to, what the processes feel like and look like, and how the entire sales cycle is designed is going to constantly change. And it's not an easy message. Like people don't really want to hear that. But I do think the people that we have done a really great job of hiring, the ones who are adaptable, can manage it. I won't ever pretend it's easy though. Change is hard. And every time we implement a change, and the bigger the team gets, the harder it is. And all we can do is just keep hammering that this will not be the last one. Here's a change, and there'll probably be another one coming, and you just have to start to acclimate. It's a really powerful skill set to have. It makes you a much better human employee, coworker, when you can handle change gracefully. But it's certainly something that takes practice and sort of a thick skin to learn how to tolerate.
Oh, definitely. What's helped you specifically, Aliisa, deal with change? Are there any things that you kind of adopt in the day-to-day that keeps you calm and collected, even as things are shifting really fast?
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard for me too. I won't pretend that I can just be cool as a cucumber all the time. Honestly, I think it's just 20 years of working in tech and being part of startups and seeing how these things go and how they play out. And you start to see, okay, I've been through this before. I've seen this movie, and that kind of helps calm you a bit. And it's the focus on the forest instead of the trees. It's like ultimately long term, what are we all driving towards? What are the company's goals? And less of like, how does this impact my day to day? And not getting so hung up on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really transformative work that you and the teams are doing. So I can definitely sense that tying yourself to that, even in those moments of, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is something unexpected, but really leaning into what you're building towards can be a great way of grounding in those moments. I mean, even with that in mind, obviously AI at any AI first company like OpenAI is much more intense than at another company. How do you find that's impacted the sales process, even in comparison to some previous roles that you've had, Aliisa, even just like 5 years ago? And how has that played into your need to really grow to this extensive team of 500 people?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, because I think it's really easy to say, okay, we have all of this inbound. We have, there's so much interest in talking to us that we should just hire as fast as we possibly can. But I think it's also important that we make sure that we're hiring responsibly and thoughtfully, and enabling people and onboarding them and incorporating and not breaking all the systems and breaking the culture. And that's been really hard. So I think honestly, we hired too slowly, and then we hired too fast, and then we hired too slowly, and it was really hard to get it right. And I still, I don't know if we're totally nailing it, but it was really helpful for me to see what too fast looks like and what too slow looks like. And I know it's always hard to get this perfectly right. A lot of founders ask me, they say, there's two schools of thought. One is you should just hire ahead on salespeople and they can go generate their own pipeline. And it's better to just always have capacity on sales and be under capacity. And the other school of thought is you should wait until you really have a need for salespeople before you bring them on to make sure they, have, the right leads, they have opportunities, and they're not twiddling their thumbs. And I really feel more in the latter camp. I don't think you should hire ahead on salespeople. And OpenAI has really reinforced that to me because, it's when we do hire a ton of people all at once, we hire a lot of people, it just creates it's uncomfortable for everybody. There's just too many people. It's disorganized. They don't get the training they need. So I think after doing this for a few years, I come back to, even if it feels like you're drowning and it feels like there's so much inbound, it's better to be thoughtful and slow about hiring.
I mean, that's such a fair point. I think a lot of companies can inspire from that as well. And even for individuals looking to grow in their companies or change roles, of just thinking about like the need for that, and even making sure we're not going too far ahead without seeing, how are we going to actually manage that pipeline of people. I've seen it happen a lot, Aliisa, where unfortunately there is a little bit of that overhiring, and then there's not as much of the hands-on guidance and support that will really set them up for success. And so I think it's great that you are really more of that philosophy of let's kind of stretch ourselves a little bit where we need to, or maybe a lot, but make sure that you're supporting every individual member in the way that they need. And maybe even on that note, as I imagine there's different metrics of success that you're using at OpenAI for the sales team, and probably revenue is a big one, but are there any other metrics or like leading indicators that you personally really care about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously pipeline. We're heavily inbound, so and that's tied to product launches, which are hard for us to totally predict or control. But getting a sense of how the inbound is trending and changing month over month and week over week. Ramped headcounts. We talked a lot about hiring, but you can't just throw salespeople right into the trenches. You got to get them onboarded. And so, how long is it taking to ramp the reps? How many ramped reps do we have? And then just looking at velocity, how fast are the deals closing? How long is the average sales cycle? Looking at average deal size. Is our price too high? What can we do to lower it? We spend a lot of energy trying to optimize pricing, which is challenging because this, compute's expensive. This product is expensive, and people are very used to buying, SaaS software with massive margins. And this is a different beast. And so figuring out how to optimize that pricing and explain it in a way that justifies the expense. So paying a lot of attention to price and average deal size and discount levels and how that's impacting sales velocity. And then the final thing is really, account activation and growth, which impacts retention long term.
Thank you so much for breaking that down. I feel like I'm getting such a good sense of how the inner workings are happening in real time and evolving with this change that's just constant. But I think it's such a good balance from what it sounds like, Aliisa, where, yeah, of course, there's the revenue piece, but there's a lot of those metrics that also likely project the impact and the growth that you're seeing there as well. So that's an amazing way of kind of framing that for us. Thank you again. I'm also a little curious. I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, my gosh, growing these teams, it's no small feat, obviously. And was there a specific moment during that 10 to 500 person team count where things almost broke, or a moment where you really had to course correct in the midst of change, maybe at the outset of ChatGPT, or even as that was just growing so quickly, or another moment that's coming to mind?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There were a lot of these moments. One example is when, so we launched a product called ChatGPT Enterprise in the fall of 2024. And this is basically the enterprise version of, fall of 2023. And this is the enterprise-friendly version of ChatGPT. So, data protections and SOC 2 and SSO and, basically the guardrails that large enterprises need to have their employees use ChatGPT. And when we first launched it, we had so much inbound that, and our team was still pretty small. I think I had, 10 people focused on that product, that we set up all of these sort of gates and barriers to get access to our team. And just to we were trying so hard to get back to everybody, but it just wasn't possible. And then over time, a few things happened. We scaled the team. We had way more than 10 reps working on ChatGPT Enterprise. I think we probably got closer to 100. And we also launched a self-serve product that made it so a lot of people could just buy the product without talking to a sales rep. So suddenly we were in a position where we had skewed our inbound funnel to make it way too strict. And then we had to go back and really completely redo our inbound lead process. So we changed our lead scoring. We changed how we routed. We changed how an SDR interacted with the lead, because before it was heavy qualification and now it was more just more data verification and making sure they were going to the right place and the right person and the right product. And so we really changed, and then we even changed the sales process, because in the beginning, the sales rep would get on and again qualify. And so we moved from mostly like qualifying to selling, honestly. And had to kind of like rip up our entire process and start it over about a year after we launched ChatGPT Enterprise, because we had indexed so much on like preventing anybody to get through to us, which sounds ridiculous. And then, we got to a point where we had hired enough. We said, okay, we can now talk to everybody, or we can talk to most of the people who reach out to us. Not everybody, but we can talk to a lot of them. And let's figure out the way to do that. I mean, in an ideal world, we want everyone to have a great experience. We want everyone to be able to talk to us. So, let's knock down all these barriers that we put in place.
That's a really good example of just kind of sometimes doing that, undoing, and then rebuilding again. I imagine that's probably happening a lot, like you said, in the day-to-day. But it's a good inspiration for those that are tuning into today's episode as well, because sometimes we could almost hold ourselves back from making certain decisions or taking chances or doing the hard call that needs to happen, and then feeling like we've poured so much energy into doing that it feels like, oh gosh, now I have to backpedal and do this all over again. But I love the way that you frame that, Aliisa, with your teams of like, okay, that's kind of like the name of the game, and being able to adjust. And it probably comes back to what you were saying about the adaptability and the agility that's really built into the way of working that even helps in those moments as they arise. I'm really keen to also get a sense, since you've hired some incredible people under you, Aliisa, for someone considering joining OpenAI today. What do you feel is the biggest hidden advantage, and maybe even like the biggest adjustment that they should prepare for?
Yeah, I think the biggest hidden advantage of OpenAI, honestly, is just the audacity. I don't know if people really grasp just how audacious and ambitious Sam Altman's dreams are for OpenAI and for AGI and for ASI, superintelligence. I think one big advantage OpenAI has when it's going after these gigantic ambitions is none of the sort of innovator's dilemma of having big businesses already that are competing with this new AI business. We don't have the legacy tech debt. We can just sprint at innovation in a way that no other company really, none of our competitors really can. And we're doing it at a breathtaking pace, which we've talked about the pace. So it's just, you have this group of people who are feeling very motivated, very positive, very purposeful, and there's nothing really stopping us. There's not the red tape and the debt of having a lot of legacy businesses that we have to deal with. So I think OpenAI it can be extremely nimble, and it can execute on Sam's audacious ambitions, which still take my breath away every time I hear him talk.
Are you working really closely with him, Aliisa, in the day-to-day?
Not so much. I think Sam is more focused on the research side of the business. I did, when I first joined OpenAI, I did interview with him and spent some time with him in the beginning, but he's never been super engaged in the sales side. He's always been more interested on the research and the R&D side and working with engineers and building the products and getting us to artificial general intelligence.
Oh, that's fair. I know that's a huge undertaking. So obviously a lot of time and attention needs to be put towards that. I mean, I'm just really like so inspired by you, Aliisa, and what you've been able to do over these last 2 years at OpenAI. As you look back and think about this too, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think I talked about we launched this ChatGPT enterprise product before we launched the self-serve version. I think we should have inverted that. I think we should have launched a self-serve version and then figured out how many people needed help from a sales team and launched the sales-led version later. So that was a bit of an unforced error. I think we underestimated how many people would just want to self-serve. So that was a really good lesson to me and to the team for any future products we launch is we should try self-serve first and then figure out how to build a sales team around the enterprise side of it. And then in general, and I hinted at this before, I think we should just probably have slowed down hiring. It takes a lot of restraint when you're drowning and you feel like I need 100 people tomorrow because I can't possibly get through today. But I do think hiring the right people and onboarding them the right way pays massive dividends. And so I think we probably, and this probably feels counterintuitive to so many people, but I do think we actually should have moved even slower on hiring and building the teams. And we have slowed down the pace since that initial frenzy to bring in a ton of people. So those are probably my two biggest lessons over the last couple of years.
I get that. Thank you for being so transparent about that. I always find it so interesting with hindsight's 2020 that if we knew that, we would do things a little differently, but it's probably bringing some really important learnings for where you're at and what will continue to unfold for you, Aliisa. Maybe in a similar vein, what's one moment you're really proud of over the last 2 years?
Oh gosh. There are a lot of them. I think launching GPT-4, which was, even though it's a long time ago, was a very proud moment because the company was still really small. We were probably 200 people maybe. And so we all really had to contribute to that. For me personally, it was getting alpha customers, having them test the product, getting their feedback, figuring out who and what to feature in the launch. The whole company came together in a way it probably can't really anymore because it's so big. But, all 200 of us packed into the cafeteria and launched it. And you had Greg Brockman over in the corner doing his, a demo, and we're all cracking up laughing at his ad-libbing. And we all just came together in a way that was really wonderful, side by side with research and engineering and sales and marketing. And everyone worked really hard on that launch. So I feel personally, very proud of that moment.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, so much to unpack here, Aliisa. I want to thank you so much for, again, being on the show, but sharing these incredible insights of this work that you're at the forefront of with your teams and being able to give us the chance to see it from a different lens and what's going on behind the scenes. I've taken away so much. I know our viewers are going to take so much from this. If for anyone that is listening to the episode or watching it and wanting to get in touch or thank you for some of the insights that you've shared, Aliisa, where's the best place they can find you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my name spelled with 2 I's, Aliisa. And I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn Messenger, so that is probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Aliisa. I actually really love the spelling of your name. It's so unique and it's an easy one to remember. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's episode. I know there's a lot of nuggets to take away from here. So please let us know what resonated with you the most. I would love to know what was some of your biggest takeaways. You could drop it right in the comments below or even hit me up over on social media. I would always be really curious to hear what stood out to you. And of course, if you're at a point in your career where you're really looking to level up and land better role, grow faster, and do that with a lot of confidence, my team and I would love to speak with you as well. You could definitely head over to my website and book a time to chat, and we can see how we can support you through that. And of course, be sure to subscribe. We have some amazing episodes coming your way, and I don't want you to miss 1 second of it. Once again, Aliisa, thank you so much. You are so wonderful and kind and generous with your insights, and we wish you continued success in everything to come in the next phase of your own career journey.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.